Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Plus Member live event. My name is Scott Sexsmith from Village Media, and it's indeed a pleasure to welcome our Plus members from across Ontario. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by the star of HGTV's Island of Bryan, Bryan Baeumler. Bryan, it's great to have you join us today. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's nice to see people and be connected to people.
Absolutely. Now, I'm assuming that's not a Zoom filter backdrop. That's a real live one.
This is this is a live filter. This is it. I don't know how to do the other filters when the kids aren't here.
No kidding. Too many buttons. That's what you need as a 14-year-old kid to help you navigate that stuff.
Exactly.
Now, I know we don't have a lot of time today, and certainly lots of ground to cover on topics like your career, family, and of course the new season of the show, which starts this weekend, in fact. So let's jump right in. But before we focus on season 3, which, by the way, kicks off Sunday night at 10 on HGTV, I'd like to go back through the journey that you've been on and ask how a guy with a dual degree in political science and business headed towards a career practicing law ends up hosting several successful renovation and DIY shows that air around the globe.
Yeah, it was a winding path to here, certainly. So I went, I spent 8 years at Appleby in Oakville and private school. It was interesting. My dad was a blue collar guy at a sheet metal company at the airport in Toronto. We spent a lot of time there, kind of grew up on the tools and doing things around the house and learning that love for the trades. But at the same time, I saw him putting in, 80-hour and 100-hour weeks to be able to send us to private school. And the joke, kind of the unspoken joke there was if you mess up here in the classroom, you're going to end up working outside there with the maintenance guys. And that I could never really quantify that because I thought I want to go work with the maid. There's nothing I'd love more than to go out and drive the tractor and help these guys, build things. And so it was an odd thing for me. I went on to Western. I did a degree in political science. I took some business and then took some time off because when the question was asked by my kind of guidance counselor, what do you want to be? The first thing that popped into my mind is, well, I want to have a nice car one day, and my dad's lawyer has a nice car, so I should be a lawyer. I mean, that's your thinking when you're 18 years old. So I moved out to Vancouver. I did some work. I opened a business in air cargo, and I worked at the airport a little bit. And I was doing some renovations on the side in houses and condos with friends of mine and other contractors. And then just decided, I didn't want to go to law school. I wanted to go back to trade school. And I came back to Toronto. I went to George Brown. I took renovation tech and Part 9 building code updates. That was it. I went full force, and a year later opened my own construction company. And the interesting thing is now I think there's a whole breed, there's a whole generation of contractors that are university educated, that have a background in business, that are also on the tools and have the love for the trade. So I think that's really important because I have a lot of guys that don't have that business background. They're great on the tools and great on site, but they don't know how to run a company. So they're great employees. But the young guys that work for us, and the first thing they say is, well, I want to open my own business one day. I encourage them. I say, well, then learn how to run a business, learn how to be a salesman, and do the accounting and what have you. And the joke with political science is that I always said that political science degree taught me to lie, cheat, steal, and the business taught me how to account for all that. So it was a winding path, but I always knew I'd end up back on the tools in the trade, and I'm glad that I did.
Did you ever think in your wildest imagination that you'd achieve the kind of success that you have with the various shows that you've done?
It's interesting. I look at the shows and our construction, the construction and production. I look at them as it's almost two separate lives. Our construction company is based in Burlington. We have, I think, with all the companies, close to 100 employees, and we do, large custom homes, and we're getting into some mid-sized developments and renovations and what have you. So that I look at as one side. Back 17 years ago, I had 6 employees, including myself, and I was watching the shows on television, and I think back in the day it was Jim Carrick and Mike Holmes were pretty much HGTV, and I thought, look at these sub trades come in and they do a day or two of work for free, and they get their name all over the television. And the host here is saying, if you need a plumber, this is the only guy that can plumb your house. If you need an electrician, here's the best guy in town. So I sent a quick email off. This is where some of the political science and the business background came in. I did a little marketing, and I sent some emails off to production companies. And I said, look, I'm willing to invest 3 months of myself and my company and my business, and I'll come down and do all your work for free in exchange for some advertising on the show. And I never anticipated, I would be in the show. I just wanted to do the work and have our company take advantage of that marketing. And I got an email back from a production company who's now actually, we own the production company with a partner. He's now my partner. And he said, listen, we want to come down to a site and meet you and do a quick interview. And he came down with a small camera, and we were on a site where a homeowner, wanted to do the job themselves and made a bit of a mess. And, we came in to take over at great expense and verbal abuse to the homeowner. And he held the camera up and he said, what happened here? And I pointed at the homeowner and I said, well, the bonehead here thought he'd build his own house and he messed it up so badly. He called me crying, and now he's going to pay me double what he would have paid me in the first place. And they looked at him and he just kind of threw his arms up and he said, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And a week later, I got a call from the head of the network and Anna Geeson. This was back Alliance Atlanta days. And she said, how would you like to have your own show? And I said, so hang on, you're going to give me jobs to do. You're going to edit them to make me look perfect. And then you're going to broadcast these to my target audience, and you're going to pay me. And she said, yes. And I said, where do I sign? So that was it. I signed for Disaster DIY the first season, and I showed up on day one, and my heart went from 60 to 300 because that's when I remembered that, in my 20s, I had a really bad anxiety disorder. And that's when it kind of came back to remind me that you can't stand in front of a camera and do all this. You're in full panic mode. So interestingly enough, it was the best exposure therapy, I think, to deal with that. But the first 3 seasons of Disaster DIY, if you see any of the old ones on, it's 24-hour panic attack shooting that show and just holding it together. So when I look back now and I watch it, I think, wow, I was just hanging on by a thread, and it just kept growing.
And nobody was the wiser.
No, it was pretty amazing. You're pretty good at hiding it when you're panicked and not sure what to do.
You're in a very unique situation in that you have mass appeal across all gender types, meaning you don't have to be somebody who's into DIY or flipping houses to be a fan of yours or of your hit TV shows. Has it been hard adapting to the fame and the notoriety that you've achieved?
That's that's an interesting part of it, because I do a lot of public speaking not so much this year, but I did a lot of traveling to home shows, to various events, and a helicopter coming looking for me here. So I did a lot of traveling to different home shows and trade schools and speaking at a lot of different events. And I remember the first speaking engagement I was invited to was the Ottawa Home Show. They said, hey, come on down, throw you on stage, you can talk to some people. And there might have been 100, 150 people in the crowd. And again, just full sheer terror and panic. And again, some of the best exposure therapy ever. And that, it's grown over the years that I would speak at 40 or 50 events throughout the year, anywhere from, 2,000 up to 10,000 people. And it's become very normal. But it's also mentally very draining, because there's 2 or 3 hours of smiles and family photos and high fives. And I think that's what people that watch the show and they enjoy it. I love talking to people. I love talking about renovations and answering questions. But it takes probably more energy to speak for an hour to a large crowd than it does to work a 12-hour day on the tools. I would get home and just be drained. And I would say to Sarah, I almost can't, my ears are ringing, my throat is sore from talking, my face is sore from smiling. And I just need to breathe for an hour. So it's a really interesting thing. And the idea of the celebrity is really foreign and strange to me. And it still is. We'll be walking down the street, and someone will yell, Bryan, and I'll kind of jump like, what? and then remember, oh yeah, we're, on these shows. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I get up, I help the kids get ready for school and sweep the garage, and Sarah makes breakfast, and we're just normal folks.
It's hard work though, and it's tiring when you always have to be on.
Yeah, it's like having electricity running through your body, and when you do get that moment, but I do feel like when we're at those events and we're out, and people in general are very respectful. We're we love to chat, so we'll get into it sometimes at a restaurant, and we call it breaking the seal. When the first person comes and says hi, that everybody else is okay, it's great, and it turns into an event. But I mean, that's part of the job. It's part of our personality now, and it's fun. It's different. This it's not a career that is listed on a list of careers to choose on career day, really.
No, for sure. Your career started in 2007, I believe, with Disaster DIY, and from there you went on to do a ton of other shows: Bryan Inc., House of Bryan, Home to Win, Leave It to Bryan, Canada's Handyman Challenge, and of course, Island of Bryan. I know it might be like picking a favorite child, but has there been a favorite show, maybe one that stood out above the rest?
I mean, Island of Bryan was, if you have the chance to move to a beautiful island with your family, I mean, that let's take that one off the table, because that's a no-brainer. But apart from that, I mean, the House of Bryan series was great because it was just us, and the way we created that, doing the format shows, Disaster DIY. Interesting little side story. After 3 years of Disaster DIY, I had gotten to know the network a little bit. I'd gotten to know the business of production. And the unfortunate thing was I could barely pay my mortgage because I was working so much on the television show. We didn't have time to run the construction business. And it didn't pay as well as the construction business back in those days. And I actually said, after 3 seasons, I need to take a break. I need to capitalize on this marketing. We get 1,000 emails a week to do work, and I have no time to do any of it. So I need to take a break. I also need, we were living in a 700 square foot 1950s bungalow with 2 kids at that time. I said, we need to fix the house up, or Sarah's going to walk out on me one of these days. It's always this guy on TV that builds these beautiful houses for everybody else. It goes home to his shoebox. It's the classic shoemaker. And that's when, the job changed, because I realized, that we had developed relationships with advertisers, that getting into the production side was important. And that's when I said, we'll come back and we'll film the House of Bryan series, and we'll bring the family in. And this now turns, it's a different approach, less amount of filming. So we had more time to run the business. And that's when we said, well, we want to own the show and the international distribution and the marketing and the ancillary. And that's when we turned the production side into a business instead of a marketing tool. And that's really when both companies started to grow, and I could relax a little bit. Well, not relax, work harder, but relax, sleep at night, pay my bills.
Exactly. Bryan, you, Mike Holmes, and Scott McGilvery seem to be the faces of DIY in Canada, and I know you've worked together on Canada's Handyman Challenge. Is there a rivalry amongst the three of you at all?
No, I wouldn't say a rivalry. It's funny. There's certain people in the industry, and I don't think in HGTV industry, but that look at it as, well, they're a competitor. Unless you're on the same time on a different network, you're not really a competitor. We're all on the same team doing the same thing. And when we get a chance to hang out and film a show together, or just see each other, it's always fun and jokes, and we don't take it too seriously. Scott and I love to kind of, he's like a little brother. We like to harass each other every now and then, and Mike doesn't live too far from us, so we'll drop in for a beer every now and then and say hi, and it's interesting because it's a very easy conversation when the three of us sit down, because they understand, they're in the construction, the production. I mean, Scott's very heavily involved in real estate investment and a portfolio there, and Mike is busy with Mike's over at CTV now, so he's made a shift. But yeah, it's really it's just flavors of dessert, right? There's all kinds of different desserts, and we're just all in the same fridge, I guess.
What's one home renovation project that DIYers should not do themselves and should call in a pro?
There's a few of them. I mean, ultimately, we're not launching rockets into space here. We're not doing heart surgery. So I always say any homeowner can learn to do anything. You can learn to build the entire house, to wire it, to plumb it, to do the HVAC, if you're willing to take the time and invest the time and educate yourself and learn and be willing to spend a little extra money for the mistakes. You can learn to do anything. In general, the average homeowner, the vast majority of homeowners should never touch electrical or plumbing or HVAC or gas or any major structural work, pulling out a wall, digging out underneath the foundation, things like that. Any of the licensed skilled trades. There's two types of licenses in construction. There's your business license, which a hot dog vendor has. It says you own a business and you pay tax, and that you have insurance. And then there's the skilled license for gas, for engineering, for HVAC, for plumbing, electrical. So those are the things that can really cause a lot of damage and physical harm and I mean, could burn your house down or electrocute you or whatever. So those are the things you should stay away from.
I want to talk briefly about the Baeumler brand and how you've grown it to include, and you've alluded to it already, so many different arms: construction, Baeumler approved, production, media. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the Baeumler Foundation and how it started, and maybe about some of the great work that you and Sarah do through it.
Yeah, so we started the Baeumler Family Foundation to raise some funds to support families that need renovations. And to be honest, we started seeing a lot of people, writing in and applying for help and just asking for help. That especially families with children that have safety or security needs. If there's homes that are full of mold, homes that are structurally unsound or electrically unsafe. Those are the things we want to help people out with. And generally what we'll do is we do raise funds through that we'll donate to other charities as well. But we'll get some of our Baeumler approved contractors together and some of our material suppliers, and we'll kind of leverage those relationships to go in and help people, for example, do a renovation to clean out a basement where, the great example in Windsor, a family applied and they had just bought a home at the top of their budget. The parents were having some issues and health issues, and they couldn't afford to repair the house, but it was full of mold. And they had 3 young kids there. So we went in and with a remediation specialist, took everything out, remediated the home, fixed the electrical, the plumbing, spray foam, cleaned it up, put secondary air infiltration in there, and just cleaned it up for the family. So it's something, we're parents and we're kids, and both of our parents kind of taught us, if you have an extra sandwich in your fridge and your neighbor is hungry, you have a responsibility to go next door and help them out. So and we have kids of our own, so we don't, we want to help out where we can and teach our kids that as well.
Absolutely. It's great work. And I know there's information on your website and people can actually make a donation through your website. So we certainly encourage people to do that. Okay, so let's go back a couple of years to when you and Sarah purchased a defunct rundown resort in South Andros in the Bahamas. Was something like that always on your radar, to do something of that magnitude on that scale?
Never. We were actually on vacation. We loved taking the kids down to the Florida Keys. We would rent a house down there, and that turned into buying a property and then buying a bigger boat that we could poke into the Bahamas, and that turned into a couple of trips. And going through, we were in Bimini on our way to Chub Key, which is just north of Nassau, on the boat, and looking on the charts, you see this massive island. Andros Island is bigger than the other 700 islands combined. So the Bahamas is over 700 islands, and Andros is this big island, and it's the least developed and least inhabited, but it has all this natural preserve. It's on the tongue of the ocean, blue holes, you name it. And I couldn't believe that there was nothing there. So we were doing more and more research on this island, and we wanted to visit it in the boat. But it was a bit far and the weather was rough and we were trapped in a harbor. So we chartered a little airplane and flew over for the day, and we'll just, we'll fly the 20 minutes and have a look around. And we got a tour of the island, and we knew there was an old hotel for sale with some history. And we pulled into it. And I think within 5 minutes, Sarah and I kind of looked at each other, and we both had this crazy look in our eye that said, like, we should buy this. And I kind of looked at her like, you're crazy. And she looked at me like, you're crazy. And I said, I dare you, you know, and she said, I dare you. And we threw an offer in, and that was it. And I think it was at that point we're like, okay, what do we do now? And I mean, we acquired the property itself for less than a piece of property that we did in Florida. So the thought was maybe we'll fix up a couple of villas, and family can stay here, we can visit. And we were actually greenlit to start a new show in the Florida Keys with another House of Bryan. And we changed our mind. I said, you know what, let's open this place. Let's build this. Let's turn it into a hotel. We had friends that owned a small resort hotel in the BVI who had agreed to come and help us and general manage the place. And I called the network and I said, we're not doing House of Bryan. We bought a hotel. And they said, well, you're crazy. We can't. I mean, the logistics of this are nuts. And I said, imagine the logistics of renovating this place. But who doesn't want to just throw their life into the air and head to an island and do this kind of thing? We thought it would be interesting, and the network finally begrudgingly agreed. And we loaded the kids up and we headed down, thinking we'd be there about a year. And it's 3 years and 1 month to the day since we arrived on that island.
Wow. To
Yeah.
say that you guys ran into some complications during the reno would be a bit of an understatement. Was there a point where you just kind of looked at Sarah and said, what the heck are we doing?
There was a lot of those points. Unfortunately or fortunately, all of those points occurred beyond the point of no return. This was it was a major investment. I mean, we're into this place for almost $11 million at this point. But we didn't anticipate the logistics issues. We didn't anticipate the hurricanes. We didn't anticipate the pandemic. All of these things that came out of nowhere. The everyday thing, the logistics problems. We could sort them out with a ship and an airplane, and a little additional expense. But it just at every turn you're getting pushed back. And I often joke. I said there's something living in that island. They call it the sleeping giant. And I said, I think he's awake and he's trying to get us off of here. But we got to a point where I just said, stopping right now is not an option. We can't put our tail between our legs and just throw this away and go home and say, well, we tried. I said, we're going to get this done. And once you make that decision, I think whether it's a family issue, an issue with your home, a business issue, once you make that decision, it's just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other. It's climbing a mountain. If you're going to get to the top, you're going to get to the top. You just have to keep going. And there were many times when we looked at each other and said, what are we doing? We could be at home much more comfortable, not putting ourselves through this pain. But to be honest, this, with the kids, they were at the right age where they wanted to come with us. The whole family was on board for this adventure. That I don't think we would get the opportunity to bring all 4 kids with us again. Charlotte's 14 now, Quentin's 16. It would be tough to rip them away from the girlfriend and the friends and the tennis to move back to an island. So I think it was the perfect opportunity for us to take this little sidestep with the entire family and just have this incredible experience that they would never get anywhere else.
Right. I know, Bryan, sometimes when spouses take on projects together, things can get a little tense. Not that I'm speaking from any kind of experience.
Yeah.
Even painting a room, things can go off the rails sometimes. So I can't imagine renovating an entire resort when you're the general contractor and Sarah's handling all the design and finishes.
Yeah.
And we certainly saw firsthand that there were at least 37 disagreements, according to the promo.
Before breakfast, yes. Every day. The interesting thing, I've always said this, people talk about divorce dust during a renovation. And interestingly enough, the way I look at it, I think, and especially our perspectives have changed on, I would say absolutely everything, especially relationships since moving to the island. But people look at a reno and say, well, they cause fights and they cause divorces. And every time we would have a disagreement or an argument, whether it's over a tile choice or the location of something or the color of the paint, the argument is not about the tile or the location of something or the color of the paint. The argument is about I needed a hug last night and you were on your phone and you ignored me. So I'm going to make you pay for it right now in this tile, because I don't really care about the tile or the color of the paint. It's just a catalyst. And I think, that in a relationship, if you're going to, if you're going to call it a day, if you're going to have a big fight and go your separate ways, that's going to happen whether you're doing a renovation or you're driving the kids to school or you're trying to figure out what's for dinner. It's just a catalyst. Now, granted, in a project this big, there are a lot of catalysts flying at you every day. So you have to sit down and really make the ground rules and say, look, there's certain things that when you say them, they push me over the edge. So don't say those, and vice versa. There's certain things that I say, like, look, I'm really passionate about the garage. I don't want your input there. And she says, okay, that's fine. Well, I'm really passionate about the kitchen, and I don't want your input on this part because my mind's really set. So you lay out the ground rules, and you decide on the battlefield, which hill you're willing to die on ahead of time. And then it's really easy to avoid that hill. You're like, no, that one there is going to get me in trouble. So I'm going to walk on by. You really have to pick your battles.
Yes, you do. And I think that everybody on this call, male or female, can attest to that. We've all walked that path. We've only got a couple.
I'll add one more thing. We found the most important part, whether it's building our own house or doing a reno or being involved in this business, we both looked at each other at some point at 10 o'clock at night. We get into bed, heads are on the pillow, and a business talk comes up. And we both looked at each other and said, there's no business after dinner. End of story. And this weekend, we're going to go take the kids out. We're going to go for dinner. We're not talking about work at all. Zero. Just take it off the table, because you need a break, or what happens is your partner becomes your business partner, and that's it. And you can't mix those two things. Between 9 and 5, we're just shareholders of the same company. After 5, we're husband and wife and mom and dad. Otherwise it gets too entangled. The lines get too blurred, and you start wondering what you're doing.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, Bryan, but I want to quickly touch on Hurricane Dorian, Category 5 that went through Florida, the Carolinas, and of course Bahamas. The resort, for the most part, I think, was spared, but you had several of your employees and their family members affected by that.
Yeah, we were actually we took the kids on an RV trip from Calgary out through Alberta and BC and onto the island. And we were halfway through that trip when Dorian, was an very active hurricane season the last couple of years. And we watch on the National Hurricane Center webpage, and you see a storm, in West Africa that gets into the ocean and becomes a bigger storm, and then it becomes a tropical storm and a hurricane. And we were directly in the sights of this as it grew, and it continued to grow as our trip continued. And then I got up one morning and looked at it, and it was headed directly for the hotel, like dead center of the cone. And I just looked at Sarah. I said, there's a very real possibility when we get back to the island where, we're picking through a pile of debris looking for personal effects. And this is it. Like, this is how the show ends. This is how the business ends. This is it. And that was kind of our first thought. And, our second thought was, my God, we have staff and friends and family. It was this realization that, like, this isn't just a hurricane headed for the hotel. This is a hurricane headed for Lawrence's house and Scott's house and all of our employees. So, our concern quickly changed. And then the hurricane veered off and went up and sat on Abaco, like just sat there like a blender. And again, our first reaction was, high fives, it missed us. And very quickly, we realized that about 27 of our staff members have family and friends, and properties in Marsh Harbor and in Abaco. So again, you realize how tightly knit all these islands are when something like this happens. We had the head of our landscaping department, Ivan, guy, always the biggest smile on his face. He never has a bad day. Saw him in tears because his 2 13-year-old sons had been missing for 3 days. They were with his mother, and unfortunately he lost his mother, but they did find the son. So we quickly went into recovery mode. Our first thought was shut the hotel down, stop construction. Let's see if we can go there, bring supplies. And it was the Minister of Tourism that actually said the best thing you can do right now is keep going with the construction. because that's employing 60 people on that island who now have additional family members that are coming to live with them, or now have additional family members that they need to support. So, just stopping everything to go to help is nice, but there's resources there on the ground. The best thing you can do is keep everybody working. So that's what we did, and we put a fundraiser up and raised about $270,000 through a GoFundMe, which we matched. And then we started chartering airplanes to bring families out of Abaco and Marsh Harbor and Freeport, and relocate them on Andros and kind of, repatriate them with their family. We started donating some lumber packages and waterproofing packages to get up there on ships to cover houses. And we kind of helped that way at arm's length. And just, it was a real emotional roller coaster to witness that, because I think at home in Canada, you see it on television, you think, oh, wow, that's terrible. But when you stand there and you see that raw power, that's come through and just destroyed something like that, it's unbelievable.
Can't imagine. I'm 3 minutes over. I don't want Paul to be upset with me, but I do have one final question. You guys do all of the work, get the renovations done, and then COVID hits.
Yeah.
How's the family? How is the resort? What's the status? What's happening?
So we had our grand opening, which was great. It was grand. It was full of people. This was in February, and we were booked solid for 6 months, fully booked, and we thought, we did it. We got this place open, and we're fully booked, and we're gonna be able to pay some of these bills, and it was a great time. And 6 weeks later, when this thing started happening, we had a hotel full of people, and all of a sudden one family said, we're going to get out of here, and we're going to leave a bit early with these travel restrictions that people are talking about. And then it was a full lockdown, no more travel except for to get people out. So everyone, there was logistics to get everybody out. And it was a really strange feeling, because nobody really knew what was going on yet. We didn't know, like, is this a flu? Is this, like the movie Contagion? Like, what is this? War of the Worlds? What's happening? And when our last guest left, we kind of looked at each other as a family and said, so what do we do? And on the business side, we said we have to lay off, staff that we just hired and just trained. Had to lay the majority of staff off to go into kind of protection, sleepy summer shutdown mode. And then we decided as a family, of course, our family said it's time to come home. And we said, we're on an island. There's no inter-island travel. There's no travel in and out. Everybody that's here is here. We have 6 months of food in the fridge and freezer for a hotel full of people. And, we felt safest there, and we decided to stay there. And, if you had told me 2 years ago I would spend that kind of money and then just shut the door and take 7 months vacation with my family locked up on an island, I would have told you you're crazy. But thankfully, we had budgeted for a year of operations completely empty, just emergency backup, budgeted for that. We planned to shut down for 2 months in the summer for hurricane anyway. So really we lost March, April, May, June, and July. August, September, and part of October, hurricane season. So we managed to hold on to make it through. And we had a reopening in October once travel restrictions started to lift in the US and around the world. And then all of a sudden more waves came. But we're, at this point, we've had 0 cases on the island. We have, most of the clients that are going there are American-based, southern and mid-southern US, Eastern Seaboard. You have to have a negative test 72 hours before getting into the Bahamas. You get a test when you arrive, and there's a test on the 5th day. And then another test before you depart back to your origin. So most of the traffic is coming in on boats or smaller airplanes, and the safety protocols are in place at the hotel. We focused on more outdoor eating and space. So, I mean, it really is the best place to social distance. You can walk 30 miles down the beach and not see another human. So we're keeping our heads above water, but we're looking forward, obviously, for all of this stuff to go away so we can hug people again and enjoy dinners with friends.
Yeah. Amen to that. For people who are interested, Bryan, in checking out the resort or booking a stay, they can simply go to cyrilamar.com and do that, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
perfect.
They can. And if you want to see what we've been up to during lockdown, once travel opened a little bit up, we brought our film crew down to quarantine with us, and we got some things done. So the new season, season 3, starts Sunday at 10 p.m. on HGTV this weekend. Tomorrow, my birthday. No, 2 days. I don't even know when my birthday is.
2 more sleeps.
That's
Bryan, this has been awesome. We can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us today. We wish you, Sarah, and the kids nothing but the best.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you to all of our Plus members from across the Village Media Network. We appreciate your support. Again, season 3 of Island of Bryan kicks off this Sunday, 10 Eastern on HGTV Canada. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by and visiting with Bryan today. Stay safe. Thanks again.